Good morning, everyone. Again, hello for this webinar about tips and tricks for Pyramix. Um, as it is a very open one, I mean, I didn't really prepare a scenario for this one. I'm very happy to answer your questions, your remarks, or any type of comments or things you would like to see. I mean, I didn't prepare. I prepared some things I want to go through, but I'm very happy to change the route or do it differently. So let me start with a few things, and whenever you have a question or things you would like to see, please use the chat and I will try to answer as best as possible. Good. So first of all, I want to show some very basic things how to handle clips and move things around. So first of all, I on purpose took here a single clip and a multi-track clip. And this multi-track clip could be something imported or something recorded, but as you see, they are grouped together, and this is a single one. So obviously you have here those possibilities to group, ungroup, and disable group. That means that if I'm now here, this becomes available, group, ungroup, disable group. By default, as soon as a track more than one clip is imported, for example, a stereo file or 5.1 file or whatever, they are grouped. And when I record them as well, they are grouped. I can disable this, but by default, they're grouped. So as soon as I ungroup it, now they are totally individual. And if I want, I can regroup them together. So how do I do this selection? I simply press Shift and I do a lasso, and it's going to take everything what is in this selection, and I'm going to group now. And now they're clipped, they're clip grouped together. And if I want to take this one on the top, I hold Shift, I add it. I group it again, so I made a second layer of group, and now they're completely together. What often happens is that you would like, for example, to just select this second clip in this group without doing all this process of ungrouping and grouping. So I can simply hold Control, which is then the opposite to Shift, it's the exclusivity. And now this one is selected that I could, for example, normalize or change the gain or whatever is required. And then as soon as I remove it and go back to it, it's back, or it never has been released from the group actually, and it is clip grouped again, but I could work this single one on its own. And if I then press this one, sorry, I do it the other way around. If I now press this one and each time, sorry, that's what I wanted to show. Each time with a control, I can exclusively select one or the other in this very group as well. Now, another thing I wanted to show, what often happens is that you have several amounts of, this is more music thing, but several amount of clips like this, and you would like to, this is very useful also for people who do, who prepare clips, audio clips for museums and other type of things, where they handle tons of clips, and you would like actually to get them a certain distance in between each of them. So I forget my monoclip for the moment, and I select all of them, and I have a functionality here called spread. And this functionality allows me to enter a gap time. So it means I could say I want to have 2 seconds in between each of those selected clips, and it's going to just put 2 seconds in between. Now I could say, okay, but I did some editing in my first clip, like this. And if I do that now, obviously I use the shortcut now. The shortcut is here under Edit and Spread. If I do 2 seconds now here, it's going to put 2 seconds in between each of those, but also here, which I not necessarily want to. So before doing that, I can take those clips and I can say clip group, so that now they're grouped together, and it's going to actually spread with the groups. So this is a nice feature. Well, if I just undo it so that we see it happen. There we go. So this is just a nice basic feature, but that helps you a lot in terms of organizing your way through. Let me go back to the basic here. And now I'm gonna talk a little bit about selecting things. We have two ways to select things in Pyramix. We have either the clip way, clicking on a clip, what I showed now, or selecting clips by making a lasso. Then we have a region. And the region, you drag and you have a region now that is selected. And each time here on the top, you also have the duration of this region and the in and the out point in frames or in milliseconds or samples, depending in which scale you are in. Now, if I go onto the right side and the left side and the top and the bottom, you see that I have those arrows showing. That means obviously that I can increase and decrease the size horizontally, but also vertically. So if I would like just to copy the two clips here in the middle, because I want to make a copy of this, or I just want to duplicate this holding D like this is a very easy way to manipulate multi-tracks, for example, and just selecting a part of what you wish. Then you obviously have shortcuts for that. So if I select this now, I can say here on the selection, sorry, on the clips, select, and then you have, let me see, no, excuse me, I know the shortcuts, I don't remember where it is. There it is, excuse me, it was in the right place. I can then move the selection up and down, for example, or I can grow the selection up and down, and I can narrow the selection up and down. So it means that if I go back here, I can do this up and down. I can narrow or increase and narrow. So I could have done this also with shortcuts. Okay, and now I have this part, and it brings me back to that. What becomes now interesting is that if I select this clip on the top, and I move actually once it's selected, I didn't here select region, I just selected the clip. Once it is selected, I can move, actually it becomes a selection, I can move it around and say, okay, now I want, for whatever reason, cut this part, for example, because it fits exactly the size of it. Or I can say, let me go into the envelope mode. Now I have the envelope here, and I could say, for example, that I would, I do it with the menu so you see where it is. There we go. I could say I want to punch the selection of this envelope. So that means that here I'm gonna say that I want to punch it by minus 12 dB with a frame, sorry, with a fade of 250 milliseconds. And now I see that I have here on this track only the size of this clip, something that is docked or just simply diminished in terms of its volume about that. That means that if I go now doing this over my entire, entire clip here, I could say, no, that's not what I want to do. I could say that I take this one, I bring it down. I want to do it here, 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 and there. Minus 15 dBs. Boom. Okay. So this is a very straightforward way of working. Or I could say also, as I said, I showed it just before, I can bring this one, and I want to do it only on my last channel, for example. Okay. That can be decreased or increased or the way you want it, obviously. Now the interesting thing is, let me just cancel it. Let me remove the points. Now, obviously, this is by selecting clip, but I can do it the same by selecting a region and move this region straight away like this. What is interesting with this region is that, as I showed before, of course, I can now copy it also. So Control C puts it in the clipboard. And now we would do the classic Control V to the play cursor. That's great. But now I can also, by right-clicking, say paste to cursor or paste to mouse. This is a basic. But then paste special. And I have the paste tail to cursor. So now this is exactly the opposite. Or I have, let me see, paste the sync point to cursor. So the sync point by default is at the beginning of the clip. But if I move my sync point somewhere in the middle, I put it again in the clipboard, and now I say paste sync point to cursor. Now obviously it's the sync point that gets pasted and not anymore the beginning of the clip. And then I have paste to original timecode, which is where I took this into my clipboard. This was the original timecode from where I took it from my timeline. So it's not the media original timecode. It's the clip, it's the position from the timeline. If I would take it from the media manager, then of course it would take it from the original timecode of the position of the media and not anymore of the clip. And then now if I do a Control C now and I keep this clip in here, I can then also say paste at the end of selection and make a copy or loop out of that if I need to. So these are basic things, but that help you to go quite quickly to move around on that action. Good. In terms of zooming also, you all know the little wheel and the Alt to go in and out. And this will zoom where my mouse is just happening. Okay, where if I use the shortcuts, this will zoom in where my play cursor is. Okay, this is the basic. Now the thing is that I can also, like with the shift to make a selection, I can do the same with the Alt to make a lasso. And this lasso now is just zooming in basically of what I selected. And I can zoom in like this if I want to, and of course can go back to where I was before. This is one way of zooming. Then if I go onto view and if I go into zoom, I see that I have some presets. Some people like it to say, I would like to always see 1 second and 1 minute. So I have a consciousness of scale. So what I can do is that if I want to see 1 second, so basically I want to see from 58 to 59, even a bit more. So this is roughly, no, it was better like this. This is 1 second, okay, from the 58 to the 59. And now I can store this one in, in there. No, there, zoom. And I can say set zoom preset. This is number 1. And now I want to see 1 minute. So from 8 to 9, for example. 8:53, 8:40 to 9:40. There we go. This is 1 minute. Like this. So we see from 8:30 to 9:30. And now I can say zoom preset, and this is number 2. And I see now to recall them, I have some shortcuts already here available. This is Control Alt 1 and 2. So wherever I am, so Control Alt 1 brings me now precisely to 1 second, and Control Alt 2 brings me now precisely to 1 minute. So if I obviously go in here, this is where the cursor behaves. I want to go back to 1 minute, boom. I want to go back to 1 second, hop. So for some people, it is very useful because it gives them a view of how can I say, of the dimension of sound in terms of length, and it can be useful about this. Good. Um, the next thing I wanted to show is to introduce you to libraries. We have here, basically, we have two types of libraries. I'm going to open the other one that is here. It's called document library. There we go. We have the document library and the global library. To explain you, they behave exactly the same. It's just that one belongs to the project. And so when I erase the project, it's going to erase this library. This is the document library. And one is is not linked to the project, and I would have to create it first to be able to use it as a file. So let me do that. But they are both having the same possibilities and work the same. So I'm in global library, and I'm going to say here library, new library, and I'm going to put it somewhere, and I call it morning one. Obviously, it is global, so it means that it can be used with other projects, and you will understand why is it very useful and why it is also important to give a better name than Morning One. But that was just my inspiration at the time. Um, and now, what I can do first of all with this library is, for example, to make a selection of this, and I hold Shift Alt. Now I see that when I hold my mouse over it, there's a form of envelope on it, and I drag it in here, and I call this my first clip. And I see, if I open it a little bit, that first of all, I have here the name I just gave, the timecode in when I dragged it in, the timecode out, the duration, the tracks, that it's track 1, then 4 to 9, the sample rate, and then some other metadata that are available. And actually, it is a clip bin. So I can bring this back in this project or in another project. And that means also it's a part of editing. So this suddenly makes it very interesting. You remember when I did my selection over here, and I could say, yes, this is a part I will need later on in this project because it's a piece of music or in a post-production, an ambience or something that I will need later. I can just put it in here, just have to name it properly so that I can recognize it. Obviously, I can listen to it also, like a media manager, and then bring it back whenever I want, in whatever project I want. This is not storing the medias, it just stores the clips. And it stores the clips as well with the envelopes and with the fades and the edits and the gain. So it means that now if I'm making here something like this and even like that and like this and like that, and I bring that in here, and I can now completely delete this part because I have it. Okay, this is now just drag and drop, but obviously I can right click and I can say place, append to cursor. This is basically drag and drop. Uh, if I have several clips, I can make them in different tracks also. Append to cursor sorted by creation date, by name, and so on. Place at original timecode on selected tracks, which is now my track 3. But if I would select track 1, it would be track 1. Or at original timecode on original track, which is from track 4 to 9. And now I'm completely bingo from what I stored is completely back without any loss whatsoever in terms of editing, envelope, fades, crossfades, and so on and so on. Going a bit further with those libraries, I could say, yes, now I want to organize. Do you remember we made one file called morning one, and this is a .pml file, Pyramix library. But I can create subfolders within this morning one library. The subfolders on the file-based system, on the file base, it will only stay morning one. But inside, I can create a whole arborescence the way I want to get organized. Because I could say, now clicking here, I could say I want to make one subfolder called ambiances, and I want to make another subfolder. One thing to know, I have to click here to be able to rename them. I want to create another one called music. Now I can take this guy, move it in here, and take those two people and move them into the music. And now I'm a bit more cleaner of what I've done. And I can take them back and move them wherever I want back into my timeline in a normal way. And this is a very interesting functionality about moving things around. Obviously, in a project, you will open just that, and you have everything what is in there and available. Now, the last thing which is important is that I then have to manage, as there are no medias, I have to manage the medias. Or let's say, if I need, if I will erase medias, or if I will move location with my computer, and I'm on a network, for example, I have to be, of course, careful that the medias come with me. So at any moment, I can take the entire library, I can right click, and I can say consolidate. That means that that will bring in the medias. I will have to define a folder and handles, and it will copy all the medias used in this library in a specific folder that I can define here, either the original folder or custom folder and so on. And then I can also set the samples I want it to be about this. Now I have another possibility or another functionality, and this is called paste with media. This is in case I take this one, I put it in my clipboard, and now you remember I made a drag and drop, but now I'm gonna say paste with media, and it's gonna take it and it's gonna ask me, okay, in which media folder do you want me to paste this media inside? Yes, no, I say no, yes, of course, because I said no. And it will then take the entire media and move it into the specified folder. One thing that is also nice is that in my library, I could also store. So then it's an organization thing. Yeah? Some people will do it inside, like put everything in one folder. Some people like to structure it in different folders. I let you, of course, organize your work the way you want. But you will see that it gives also some possibilities that are interesting. Where is it? Here, for example. Oops, it's on the other screen. I bring it back here. For example, just one very basic low cut. Let's say at 80 Hertz. This is a super classic that many people use. Shift Alt, I bring it in here, and I call this EQ low cut 80 Hertz. There we go. And then whatever, in whichever project I am, I just can drag and drop and have my EQ straight away there and available. This will only work with some with merging plugins. Right? It wouldn't work with VST or other manufacturer plugins. Unfortunately, that's how it is. But at least it gives you some basics that are very nice for EQ compressors, strip tools, and so on. You can even save it when you record some instruments or comedians regularly. Um, you can of course also make it in a way that it's a more complex thing. And this is EQ from Louise, as she comes to record often over here. So when I have an EQ with nothing, I just record it, and then of course I can fine tune it because perhaps she has a bit different voice today than last week or whatever it is. So this is a very interesting way, and even you could do it that way that you can drag in your mixer, mixer for let's call it for editing, and so that means that I'm gonna change the mixer into something different. Oops, there we go. Yes, let's make just one stereo. Oh, I forgot to select the numbers of strips. Okay, I went too fast. One stereo bus and two stereo tracks. That's good. So now I make something completely different, which has nothing to do with the previous mixer I had. Obviously, I will lose some connection tracks and so on. So this is nothing similar to before. And there's a security for the mixer because so that you don't just drag and drop it on it. You have to press Control Shift Alt. And now you have this kind of crab showing up, and you release it, and it's going to rebuild and reconstruct the mixer I had before. No, why? That's funny. That happens. Not very happy about this one. Why didn't it do it? Perhaps I just hold it not properly my keyboard. That's what it was. So Control Shift Alt. Perhaps while talking about it, I was doing something else. So now I have the mixer that I had before, and of course then I have to reconnect because I diminished the numbers of tracks. I have to reconnect those edit tracks to my mixer, and I have my mixer again that I had before. So this is a very convenient way to work with libraries. For those on the mixer side, of course, you have it also here in the organize, but you can use the libraries as well for that. And it's a very neat way to use this in terms for clips and for mixer items, if you wish so. Another way of using the libraries, which I think is very interesting, is now I'm gonna import an AEF. And when I'm importing an AEF, there we go, I will have the possibility to create a new project. Obviously, if I start from scratch, create a new project when I'm opening it that shares the current project mixer. We're going to see in a second what it means, but also insert it at the bottom of the existing project or append or replace. So those are functionalities, they're great, but you might want to look at your AEF ini individually. Okay, hello Alex. Yes, I'm coming to that in a second. Let me finish the AEF import. And so, of course, I don't want to destroy, or I want to first have a look on on what it is, this AEF, before integrating it into my project. So I can create a new project that shares the current project mixer. So you will see the shared mixer up here will turn green, and let's go. Uh, why? Because I can then toggle very quickly from one project to another without creating, obviously having several projects, toggling from one project to another without recreating or changing the mixer. So I have the same in, outputs, whatever it is. And then have this possibility to, I have an AF here. I'm not going through those menus, they're quite obvious. Um, and then move this library, sorry, move this imported AEF into a library before, what is this? Looking for a clip. Yes, okay. Oh, because it does some relink. I say cancel. No, there we go. It was looking for some other medias. Good. Now this is the imported AEF, and I see I have a shared mixer. This is here red, and I can go to my this one, and it changes nearly instantly because we have the same mixer. So this mixer, sorry, this mixer here that I open now is basically shared with those two editing projects. Okay, which is very comfortable because you can listen to your AEF from what I just imported. And now, as it looks like, or it is exactly what I want or what I was expecting, I now can either put it in the clipboard, but even I would say more elegant, I can make it here into my library. I make a Control A, so select all, bring it into my library, and call this import AF. So it has now the original timecode of when it was imported with the original clips and all of that, because then I might then edit it and change it. So I go now to the other project, and now, of course, I can import it, drag and drop it, paste it to the original timecode or whatever it is. But this is a clean way how and to not mess up your existing project by overwriting something by mistake, but also in case you start to edit and you want to reach back to the original time AF, you always have it here. Okay. Um, what is for managing multiple destination, for example, editing overdubs on top of an existing destination? Um, Alex, you mean in a source and destination modus? That's what you mean? To make sure that I understand your question. I don't know if Alex is still here. If it's that, I guess that's what it is. I mean, if edit a bed track using source and yes, source and destination. Okay, so let me open a source and destination. I will take the source and destination um, I did the other day for the, yeah, now I got it. Um, so this is the source and destination project I was using the other day for the source and destination webinar. Um, so managing an overdub in here, let me just uncollapse them and open them so that we can see what's happening. Um, there we go. And there we go. So what you would like to do is you want to overdub in an existing source, I guess. So you can straight away record into the source, and then okay, I start to understand what you mean. What I would like, what I would do, if you have already some work done in your destination. So let's just make it quick and dirty. So we have something available like this. So you've done your complex editing, and what you need to do is to record this part the next day because there was something wrong and there's an overdub to be done. So what I would suggest actually is typically using the libraries where you see this library is now there, this morning one, where I would just bring this guy into the library and I call this master before recording so that it is clear. Then what I would do is to create, I have all my sources occupied and I don't want to record in there because I don't want to create a mess. So what I will do is that I make here a duplicate and I call this record. So I made a new, basically, multi-track down here that is now only there or only available to record. And I take the library, I take my master bed before recording, I select the track of destination here, I say place. On original timecode on selected track, I selected it before, and now it is down here. So basically, I made a copy. I could have made a copy paste, huh? Just Control C, Control V. But so I have it in the library, and I can reach back whenever I want. And so now I can make my recording in here. Yes, of course, if I would have to select a destination for my recording, that would be even better. Let's put it in here, and I'm gonna call this record one. So now I can make my recording over there. So with my different takes, I can even, if I want, use playlists for that, create a copy playlist each time so I don't lose what has been done previously. So I do my overdubs. And there we go. And now I can reach back. I show this at the same time so that you see how this functions. I can go to these different playlists and recall my different playlists, right? Of my recording 2, of my recording 3, and so on. And now I want to keep this part. I put it in the clipboard. I go into my last record 4, and now I'm gonna say paste, for example, to the original timecode. So it's integrating all of that. And this is now what I want to keep of the recording, right? But now this is in a source. This is not the destination. So I have to bring it back on the top with all my markers. So I would take this part of the overdub that I want to keep, put it back in the library or just put it in the clipboard. I put it in the clipboard now, Control C. And now go back on the top here and very simply go say here, paste special to original timecode. Oops, very nice mistake. I have to select the first track and say paste special to original timecode. And now I have it straight away here. And the only thing I would have to, of course, manage is that the crossfade, I have on this project an automatic crossfade, but that the crossfade is basically properly done on my insert. This is the way I would do it because on my master track, I would have already tons of PQ markers and things and stuff and edits that I don't want to lose, so to say. So I can just create this very quickly this bin track and work on that. Hopefully this answered your question, I hope. But let me continue. If you have any more question, please ask. As I'm, what about this? I need to overdub vocalist on top of an orchestra. So the overdub, okay, microphone. Can you have multi-destination groups? Yes, you can. But when you will do an overdub, even of one track, here I mean, I showed it in a multi-track, but you can very easily do it over that track only. And you record here, you make your overdubs. And gonna call it vocal so that we don't mess up with that. I mean, this is totally valid for one or for multiple tracks. And now again, you make your editing, your playlists if you want, and you keep whatever you want in that aspect. And now I take just the part I did in my first track, and I select, of course, my destination. I'm going to paste it in, right click, paste special to original timecode, and now I'm here. So either it is one track or multi-track. I don't see really the difference on that. Hopefully this answered your question. You're welcome. Good. One thing I wanted to show also, we've seen, and perhaps let me go back to another project that is a bit bigger, like this one. Oh yes, I'm in shared mixer and I shouldn't be. That's why it shows like this. But this is not the deal now. Good. So the thing is that here, this is a project typically, and that perhaps I receive or I need to work on. And I know that these parts, for example, have not been edited properly in terms of fades, and I want to be sure, for example, that they all have the right fade in and fade out I want to. So of course, I can individually, one after each other, change the fade and have it right, or go into my fade editor and put the fade in I want in terms of the look of it. But I have here then a menu, right click, fade in, crossfade, and fade out. And I have each time the possibility to say new, but then I have the possibility to add some curves. And then last but not least, I have here my library. So my library, it's in the fade editor. I showed it in other webinars, but in the library, sorry, in the fade editor, I can store fades in the library. But here I can recall them over the selection. So now you're going to see over everywhere, I'm just going to straight away apply this one frame fade as a fade in. And now I'm going to do the same for the fade out. Oh, and you see all my fade outs disappeared. I mean, visually, they're just now exactly one frame of what I selected and with the right curve. And this is done either over the entire project or over a selection. And typically, I can make macros out of this type of things, or I can, to end up with, I'm going to show you how I can create a macro. For example, instead of making this and making now a crossfade here, I would like to make a macro so that each time overcut, with one knob, with one shortcut, I create a crossfade of, let's say, 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds. So the first thing is that, or for the length I've decided. So the first thing is that I'm going to open my macro editor, and I'm going to call this uh, xfade root cosine. And I got to use those functionalities. So those ones saying here crossfade, and I find them back in clips, crossfade, fade in, fade out, crossfade, right? And so in my macro editor, there, I know it is under clips and crossfade new. So double clicking brings me this as the first command. And then I'm gonna say I want those to be root cosine. Okay, so this is very basic. And now I'm gonna say I'm gonna close this. And so that means that the next time when I will be over a clip, let's just make it very easy here. This is now a cut. Let me make this a bit bigger. And now I'm gonna select this part and I'm gonna say macro. Hop. That's it. And it makes it exactly over the decision. But here now, this macro can have applied a shortcut to that in my keyboard shortcut editor. Thank you, Nikolai, I've seen you answered also. But I don't know if you arrived now, Nicola, but I explained before also another way where we can do that. Just last but not least, sorry, to go here to the macro editor that is now here, and I can say Shift F if I want to apply this here. So it means in my next cut, I can say I want to have this size crossfade editor, root cosine. Why, and this is where I'm going to terminate, in my keyboard shortcut editor, there's a very important feature and function. You're going to say, okay, but how can I understand clearly and learn where to find my different functionalities? Where do I know where I can find it? Either in the macro tool, either in the menus there, and so on. Here I have a possibility to export the table of my keyboard shortcut editor. So it's going to export, of course, the table. You will see the content with all I'm going to call it shortcuts, with export all commands, with all my actual shortcuts at the moment in time. So you can recall the basic shortcuts or do it with the actual shortcuts. That's not a big deal. But this is a RTF document, and that means it's a text document. And that means once it's open, you're going to see it. I'm going to bring it over to the screen I've shared for you so that you can see it. So we go. So basically, these are 37 pages. There are some pages you can eliminate. For example, when it says from track 1 to 99 or whatever it is, there are a few pages you can gain. But the idea is that you have those big titles, project, edit, and so on. These are basically, no, that's not what I wanted to show. It's this one. These are basically the titles over here, right? And then I have three columns. First column is what is written in this menu. Second column is the shortcut I just exported. And the third one is explaining a little bit in the jargon what this function is doing. As every workstation has different names, calls it differently, and so on. There it explains a little bit what this functionality is doing so that you understand it a bit better and that you can use it. And by reading that, going through those a few 30 pages, you will clearly understand how to find those functions, how the menus are structured, and even if you are, for example, seeking for something, it is a document. So you, for example, you look for, well, let's do zoom, very basic. And now, aha, okay, all the zoom functionalities, they are here and they are in the view menu, makes sense. Previous zoom, zoom in, zoom out, and I don't know if there's something else about zoom. No, that's it. So view, zoom, and they're here. Okay, so it gives you a very interesting way about approaching things, about learning things, and understanding where you found them. So I went through, oh yes, one last but not least, and this some of you will know perfectly and others are fighting for that. But on the view, this is where you can, I often have this question, that's why I'm saying it here. You can choose either between fixed cursor, free cursor while chasing, and cursor auto return after playing. That means that now the symbol of my cursor will change, and it's now my timeline that goes underneath instead of my cursor that moves over the timeline. And then auto return cursor, you see now the symbol has changed. It comes back each time to the same place where I started with. And of course, you can enable, disable this, and you can also apply shortcuts to that. Great. I hope I could answer to some of your interrogations and gave you some tips and tricks about editing and other things and libraries and so on. Do not hesitate to ask other questions. There's a webinar today again at 6 p.m. Central European Time, where I will show a bit about the same things and a bit other things as well. So stay tuned and see you soon and stay healthy. Bye.